All right, guys, popping on here again. We're continuing with our lecture series on homeostasis equals longevity. Today, we're going to talk about the omnivore diet personalized as an approach to homeostasis and longevity. In our pursuit of optimal health, achieving homeostasis will lead to longevity over time. And again, homeostasis is the body's ability to regulate itself despite environmental challenges without supplementation. This is an important concept because if you use your body in the right way, in an efficient manner, your chance of developing chronic diseases down the road diminishes. So examples of homeostasis again in the body are regulating body temperature, blood pH, and nutrient balance. And the importance of this in or for longevity is because homeostasis is the balanced way for the body to regulate itself. And that includes autophagy. So let's dive in. The first thing we're going to talk about is the extremes diets that are out there. Everyone knows these carnivores and the vegans, they're all basically vying for a seat at the table, so to speak. Let's talk first about the elusive carnivore diet. The carnivore diet, as everyone knows, is based on just animal products. There's no plant products. It's a diet composed all of animals. Now, the use of the carnivore diet by doing this is subject to homeostasis problems. Now, if we look at the carnivore diet in itself, by eating only animal products, we basically subject ourselves to an extreme. It's not balanced. So the problem here is lack of fiber, some lack of vitamins and minerals, and there's a micronutrient gap that essentially, with rich in proteins and specific in fats, it lacks critical vitamins like A, C, E, and K. That's why these people are promoting DAKE. So what's its impact on homeostasis? This can lead to constipation, potential vitamin deficiencies, intolerances in the microbiome, and ultimately affects metabolic processes. So the bottom line here, however, I'm not against the carnivore diet. I actually used the carnivore diet in the beginning of my journey for health, but I've matriculated to a different type of diet. But I think it's important to look at the people that are promoting this, and essentially they appear healthy, but there are some derangements. So, summary with the carnivore diet, I think it's good in the interim, and I cycled on the carnivore diet to get me where I wanted to be, but then I went to a different diet, and we'll talk about that. So the next diet to consider, let me back up to that. So there's one person that I kind of respect online. She's a little extreme, but the Primal Bod lady.
They eat 2 eggs for breakfast every morning, but 2 eggs only has 12 grams of protein. That is it, 12 grams.
She uses the carnivore diet exclusively. Now, she probably maintains a caloric deficit. She doesn't do a lot of exercising from what I see, but she maintains a deficit. And she takes a few supplements that she'll tell you, iron, and a few other things. But in general, she looks healthy and her numbers look good. But I would say she doesn't overconsume. That's the problem with the keto diet and the carnivore diet. People tend to overconsume. Then you run into problems. So if you don't overconsume, it's probably okay. And then the other reason it's easy to use is because it's minimally manipulated food if you get it right from the source. So you don't have to worry about ultra processed foods and manipulation of the food or preservatives. So that's a wrap for the carnivore diet. I used it intermittently. So let's move on to the vegan diet. The vegan diet, it's a plant-based diet, obviously. A true vegan diet excludes all animal products. Now, what are the potential nutrient deficiencies? There's a lot. Vitamin B12 and iron. Although moringa tree from Africa can supply a huge amount of iron, so look that up. I think that's a good supplement there. And then the protein completeness, that's a problem. And not only that, is I tried the vegan proteins, and they are a little discomforting in terms of gastrointestinal upset. It's probably because of lectins and that kind of thing in the plant-based proteins. But I did find one, Flip 7 Superfood, which I have a relationship with, but that's plant-based. It's a pea-based protein. I get no gastrointestinal upset, but they supply enzymes to break this down. So if you're thinking about this right now, the vegan diet is a little bit more tricky because the micronutrients are a little bit less available. And then the bioavailability of these things. So the impact on homeostasis is the deficiencies can lead to anemia, fatigue, weakened immune system, your bones can become brittle, and hormone dysregulation. So if you don't supplement the deficiencies from the vegan diet, you're going to get into problems with homeostasis, which I see all the time. Just go out and look at carnivores versus vegans. There's a discrepancy in the appearance. I don't know which one's better from a health standpoint, but you can make your own determination. So let me use Brian Johnson. He's a great guy, the Don't Die guy. So he's purely vegan, but he takes 110 supplements a day. He's strictly regulated. He also posted something on the internet that he had a fracture of his ankle dancing. He's in his 40s, and he's on supplemental testosterone. He should not have to take supplemental testosterone. I don't take it. I'm 62 and I've got normal levels. So what I'm saying is be careful of these extreme diets. So the obvious answer is, what are we? And the obvious answer is we're omnivores. From an evolutionary standpoint, we're omnivores. We're hunter-gatherers. We consume animal products and plants. And we have the ability to process these things. Cows can't. They can only process plants. Their intestines and stomach and all their gastrointestinal system is made for that. Ours is made, and our teeth are made to be hunter-gatherers or omnivores. That's how we were made. So I'm not following some of the carnivore arguments and the vegan arguments that we're strictly one or the other. We are omnivores. So the omnivore diet as an approach to homeostasis, if you pick and choose the right food and cycle in and out of the different animal products, it is probably a more balanced way to reach your goal of homeostasis and longevity. When I started this, I read a book by Michael Pollan called The Omnivore Dilemma. And this book is a breakdown of all of this. Like, what is our optimal food source? And he goes through all the different cultural, the evolutionary components, and everything. And as articulated in his book, we are hunter-gatherers. The industrialized diets of ultra processed or processed food is what's failing us right now. And so if we just go back to where our ancestors came from, hunter-gatherers, that's the answer. And so you can basically mold in both diets, both ideas, and come up with an ideal food source. So one of the challenges right now is that we're faced with this industrialized food source. And the problem with that is, and I see this in Brian Johnson's stuff, you know, all these supplements are processed food source. So if you're going to lean on a diet that requires heavy supplementation, isn't that using processed food source? In my opinion, yes. And you got to look at bioavailability. Food is better than supplements. If you can't get your supplements from the food, obviously supplement. But the food is better. Eating food, minimally manipulated food, is better for your supplementation rather than supplementation. So that goes along more with the carnivore thing. So, what has this done? So essentially, when you follow Michael Pollan's argument, we have been disconnected from nature. And I'll totally agree with that, because if you've watched my videos on the sun and lighting and the environment, it all plays a role. So when you become disconnected with nature, the industrialized machine takes over, which is not you. Your biology can handle you, but if you shut it down by letting the industrialized machine take over, by using processed or ultra processed foods, you've given up with your own body, and now you're subject to different rules, not nature. We were designed by nature and God. Why disconnect ourselves? It's an interesting question. So let's move on to the last thing. So the obvious answer to me, you can argue all you want, but to me, and where I sit now, is personalizing the omnivore diet through epigenetic analysis. So let's dive into that. The concept is, everybody's out there on the internet saying, hey, take this supplement, that supplement. I fall into the same trap. But after hearing both sides of the argument, I'm not falling for that anymore. The way to do it is to measure yourself. Stop guessing. Stop saying, oh, my friend Joe's taking this and it feels really good. That's crazy. That's not science. That's crazy. So my suggestion is, and we talked about this in a previous video, is establishing a foundation and personalize your nutrition. So let's dive into it. What is an epigenetic hair scan? An epigenetic hair scan is a way that we take a few locks of your hair back here, and it gives a 90-day window of how your body's functioning from a micronutrient, vitamin, food allergy, food processing, and environmental toxin analysis. This can be immediately performed. Within 5 minutes, you can have a report of where you're at. What does this do for you? It tells you your window of what you're deficient in. Then you can design your omnivore diet, balanced diet. I choose Mediterranean. And then you can supplement what your deficiencies are based on this. So we can also develop customized nutrition based on this. Now, the other option is a little bit more in detail, but it's more scientific, and it's what we do, is we do a PNOE, P-N-O-E, VO2 max test. which includes indirect and direct calorimetry. So it can measure your body's ability to process foods and where you're at. So if you're on a carnivore diet, you're utilizing lipids as your source that gets broken down into ketones, and then your brain uses it for energy. If you're using carbohydrates, which bodybuilders use a lot of carbohydrates because they cannot get enough calories with lipids and protein, you're in carbohydrate metabolism. But they can take that because they exercise enough to deal with that. But it does cause a lot of inflammation, let me tell you that. So choosing protein, fat, carbohydrate versus carbohydrate, protein, fat, the old way, I'd choose this way because it's less inflammatory. And that's the key, to have less inflammation. But you can balance this. So we can balance this. We can measure you, figure out what you need, and then talk about what your goals are, what you think, where you want to go, and then move on from there. And this can all be done with a simple little test. So let's dive into achieving homeostasis with the omnivore diet. What does this do? It naturally balances your nutrition via personalized nutrition with micronutrients and macronutrients. Via our testing, we can figure out what substances trigger your gut, because your gut health is probably the most important thing for absorbing these nutrients. So one step in figuring that out is to do the epigenetic hair scan, and we can figure out intolerances. But let me make a point about intolerances. There's people out there that think they're intolerant to everything. I listen to this all the time. I don't think it's really an intolerance. I think it's overconsumption, and your gut is leaky, and you've developed all this immune response against this. So I think if you can reset your system and give it 3 months and do something simple, minimally manipulated, we just talked about, you'll reset those intolerances and be able to move on. But people want to identify these as victims because, oh, I'm allergic to that, I'm allergic to that. I thought I was lactose intolerant. No, I'm not. I had a gastrointestinal dysmotility problem, and it manifested itself as heartburn because I couldn't move it. But I thought it was an intolerance to lactose. It's not. So start opening your mind and start thinking critically. What am I doing? How do I support my body's physiology so it can support me? So in summary, the omnivore diet as a personalized approach to homeostasis and longevity provides a great foundation for you to achieve optimal homeostasis and longevity. And I utilize the carnivore, utilize the vegan diet, utilize the different protein sources. Not one's better than the other. They're beneficial to each other. So the obvious answer is the omnivore diet. I don't know that anything's more obvious, so I'm not sure where the arguments come from, other than to try to sell things. And I'm not selling anything here. I'm telling you, this is what I did. This is what I came up with as being a neurosurgeon. I'm becoming a fellowship trained hormone replacement through A4M, functional medicine, MD, regenerative medicine, MD. I'm attaching everything to this, and that's what everything should be. And let me make a point about this. Traditional medicine has become a siloed out healthcare system. You go to the cardiologist, they talk about your heart. They minimally talk about this stuff. They're coming around. You go to a surgeon, they talk about your back problem. They don't talk about if you have a medical problem, they send you out. Well, not my practice anymore. I don't do that. We take care of that. We have a hormone, nutrition, and bone health optimization clinic that we do for our patients undergoing or potentially undergoing musculoskeletal surgery. And we want control over this. We are trained for this. And we're not just the surgeon anymore. We're an Asian type functioning medical system within my little system. And that's why I called it the Center for Life, because I want to go back to what physicians should have been, and that's holistic doctors. But we never got taught that, so I had to teach myself that. So when people start criticizing other people for their views on things, I tend to take it all in stride and open my mind to what they're talking about. My field, chiropractors are bashed by all the spine surgeons. Oh, those guys, they're this and that. They're just bone doc. Well, you know what? Some of my best friends are chiropractors, and they opened my eyes to this. So let's all embrace this open mind and value everybody's opinion rather than dismissing everybody's opinion. And I think that's the real value in society today, not this bashing, which we see horribly right now politically. So that's my thoughts on this. I really think this is one of the hardest talks I've done because it's so controversial. But I think you can make up your own mind. I don't really know how you can argue with me on this one, but go ahead. I think it's a balanced approach, but make sure you maintain a caloric deficit if you're trying to maintain a body weight. Thank you.